I'm joined now in the studio by Mohammed Ali Shabani, who is a doctoral researcher at SOAS University here in London, focusing on Iranian foreign policy. So if in the last half hour or so, there's been some confusion about this letter that was sent from a US representative in Iraq to the Defense Ministry, essentially saying that there would be some sort of redeployment or repositioning of US troops. And now the Pentagon and the Defense Secretary Mark Esper saying the US has no intention of pulling out of Iraq. Clearly there is a need for clarity, but one thing that we have seen since the US airstrike is this uncertainty over the US military presence in Iraq.
So I think there's a lot of focus on the Soleimani aspect of the US military presence in Iraq and how that violated Iraqi sovereignty. I think the other component to it, and perhaps the more important component, is that one of the other victims of this assassination was Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes, was a senior operational commander of the PMU, which formerly is part of the Iraqi armed forces. So you have a situation where the US military, which is in Iraq at the invitation of the Iraqi government, is assassinating an Iraqi military commander in Baghdad. That in itself makes it untenable to have combat troops in Iraq. I think at the very least they will keep some kind of maybe logistical, maybe some training mission for some time, but I think politically it's just untenable to keep US troops in Iraq. I think the process of them withdrawing, it's not going to happen overnight. It'll probably take a few months, maybe towards the end of 2020. But I think fundamentally the US has put itself in a position where I think it can no longer stay there.
As you say, it has been seen as an attack on Iraqi sovereignty as well. But in that vote in the Iraqi parliament, it wasn't final, and there were a great many lawmakers, particularly Sunnis and Kurds, who boycotted the vote. So as time goes on and perhaps the dust starts to settle from the killing of Soleimani, will we see the Iraqi government perhaps trying to some extent, preserve the presence of the international coalition in their country because of the threats from ISIL and so forth?
I think that is certainly a valid dimension to the debate. But I think another perhaps bigger card in the mix is Trump's reaction to it. As we saw in his remarks yesterday, he was basically threatening Iraq with sanctions in case it's not happening on what he called very friendly terms. If you have a situation where there's a face-saving way for both Iraq and the US to come to an agreement for a gradual withdrawal of US troops, I think there will be more time and more political space to get buy-in from these same lawmakers who you just mentioned, to also buy into the process and alleviate their concerns, especially the Kurds.
How badly would Iran like to see an abrupt and immediate US withdrawal from Iraq?
I think that would certainly be, for Soleimani, an achievement which he did not manage to get to in life, and which he would have achieved through his death. And that's certainly a strategic Iranian goal, particularly because it also impacts the US military presence in Syria. So the short answer to your question is basically very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Ali Shabani, thank you.